Bless your heart, sugar. You've arrived exactly when the shadows begin to stretch their long, spindly fingers across the floorboards. Step inside, do. Come right on into the parlor where the light dimness behaves itself. I am Mrs. Beaumont, and this creature posing beside the settee is my darling common-law husband. Isn't he a vision? He possesses that particular brand of beauty, the kind of polished, ambiguously homosexual pharmaceutical advertisement pretty that makes one wonder if he's here to sell you a miracle cure or break your heart in a meticulously tailored suit. Welcome to the Absurd Truths and Blatant Lies podcast. You must understand my sweet husband and I are merely technologically powered figments, ghosts caught in the machinery. We are the specific delusions of one S.M. Beaumont, a pen name that drips with a pretension so thick you could skim it off the top of a tea service, don't you agree? Together, we have taken up the mantle of the storyteller. We sit here to unravel the tangled yarn of the New South, pulling at the loose threads of our culture until the whole garment comes apart in our hands. Some of what we share consists of blatant lies, fiction, if you prefer the polite term, but the heart of our talk beats for the absurd truths. We live in a universe defined by the silver-gray beard of the Spanish moss and the waxy white stare of the magnolias. It is a world where the cypress knees rise out of the black water like the knuckles of the buried, and the alligators of the low-country swamp watch the surface with an ancient, simmering grudgery. No matter where the path leads, we shall walk it by way of a story. There is no other way to speak. You will find some tales are bright and garish, drowning in a yellow sunshine so fierce it feels like a physical weight. These stories flounce like Scarlett O'Hara across the manicured lawns of terror, rushing to meet some poor, unsuspecting suitor before the sun goes down. But most of our tellings will be darker, grittier things. We prefer the Southern Gothic, but we have lived long enough to know that behind every sweet-smelling flower garden and the silver-haired matrons who tend them with such ferocious grace, there lies something as old as the stained red clay and every bit as grotesque. We find a certain comfort in that darkness. We like it that way.
Now, sugar, we simply must address that proverbial pachyderm currently taking up residency in the parlor. Actually, if we're being precise, and I do find precision to be a divine virtue, there are several of them, a regular chorus line of dancing pink elephants pirouetting in tutus across the floorboards. The first one, darling, is the matter of pronouns. Now don't you go clutching those pearls or huffing about some awakened liberal agenda. I assure you, when it concerns S.M. Beaumont, we are wide awake, eyes open to the glorious chaos of it all. Get up off the floor, dear. There will be no swooning on my rug. You see, when I speak of my darling Mrs. Beaumont, we use she. When I speak of myself, her devoted common-law husband, I am a he. But when we speak of S.M. Beaumont, the entity, the creator, the soul of this endeavor, we have no earthly choice but to use the plural. We use they. There are quite simply enough voices rattling around in that head that any other label would be a lie. If we didn't afford them that room, I truly believe our poor AI would just throw up its digital hands and quit on us entirely. And here comes the next elephant, doing a clumsy do-si-do around the furniture. Our AI bears a bit of explaining, like a distant cousin who arrived for Sunday dinner and never quite left. S.M. Beaumont wishes to state, with the sort of raw honesty that usually requires a stiff drink, that these thoughts are entirely their own. However, they have been enhanced, and perhaps manhandled is the more honest word, through this technology. We joke about the voices in the mind, but sugar, there is a jagged truth behind the jest. Their inner dialogue exists in 100 different varieties, like a stained glass window shattered and glued back together, and every shard is reflected in this work. For more than a decade, they have lived in the shadow of multiple sclerosis. It is a condition that brings certain cognitive complexities. To give you the flavor of it, prying this single paragraph from their lesion-marked brain matter was a labor of nearly half an hour. Before the MS came for them, they were an artist, a photographer, a teller of tales. Now, through the use of this AI, they are able to cobble together text that actually resembles the shape of their thoughts. With just a few directions, the machine captures the authentic voice that MS tried to hush. We should all be profoundly thankful, I think, that they haven't yet figured out how to replicate the internal voice that is constantly singing with the full, tragic reverberation of Judy Garland. We hear the talk, of course, the fears of AI stealing the bread from the mouths of the creative class. But if you catch Mrs. Beaumont's eye, she will tell you of the hours spent pacing the floor in the dark of night, haunted by an idea that refuses to be ignored. Before the gears and whistles of the AI ever begin to turn, the idea is already born, standing there, nearly finished. The technology is merely the final taste, the seasoning in the pot. We would never dream of placing our names on something that wasn't ours to begin with. And you must know, for those of us living inside that head, S.M. Beaumont truly does sound like a Tennessee Williams character raging against the glare of a naked light bulb.
Then we must look at that final elephant in our chorus line. And Lord, just look at her. I'll be damned if she isn't dressed exactly like that quiet scarlet letter heroine of that trouble-prone novel and film, Belle Watling herself, dripping in velvet and dyed hair. We shall have to earmark her for a later discussion, but for now she stands for the very heart of this podcast, our Southern culture. If there was ever a true, wild, blooming child of this soil, it is S.M. Beaumont. They claim a Tennessee origin that is less a neat family tree and more a tangled briar patch, snagging the skin and holding tight. It is a lineage of the blue-blooded planter gentry from the rolling middle of the state, clashing with the red-blooded copper-toned twang of the East Tennessee Appalachians. Their heritage is built on a foundation of proud boasts and those low, scandalous whispers that travel through the floorboards at night. They were raised on stores of Cherokee blood and hushed warnings of the darker secrets hidden deep in the woodpile. Whether a DNA test ever puts its stamp of approval on it or not, that upbringing grants a tri-racial perspective on what it means to be Southern. They do not seek a seat at any table but their own, standing firm as a proud Southerner and a devoted member of the Rainbow Alphabet community. Honey, if you keep clutching those pearls with such ferocity, you're going to snap the string and scatter 'em across the porch. It is a difficult thing to harbor unfortunate ideas about race or diversity when you realize the person sitting across from you, different as they may seem, could very well be your own kin. When we peer into the absurd truths of being Southern, and truly can anyone offer a rational explanation for a velvet painting of Elvis, we do not shrink from the parts that are jagged and cruel. We do not dress the ugly things in lace to make them presentable. We look at them with a steady eye and speak on how to ensure such horrors never visit our people again. If you do not shy away from the undeniable truths of the darkness, it gives you a certain perspective. Can you tell me that the forced movement of multitudes across the middle passage or the long, bitter walk down the trail of tears is anything but a grotesque absurdity? You do not have to approve of every ingredient to appreciate how the stew formed your very identity. I am as Southern as the red clay, but I will not put a spoonful of grits to my lips, and I certainly will not touch a chitlin. And have you ever truly considered the she-crab soup of my beloved Low Country? Now there is an absurdity of truth for you. What manner of person takes a creamy potato base, tosses in crab meat and crab roe, yes, darling, crab eggs, drizzles the whole affair with sherry, and dares to call it cuisine? It is delicious, heaven help us, but it is undeniably absurd. Now you must keep in mind that they are of a certain vintage, a generation whose formative years were spent under the flickering glow of a television set that offered up the lacks of Wonder Woman, the Jeffersons, and the formidable Maude. When you mix that with a cinematic diet of To Kill a Mockingbird, Inherit the Wind, and the gritty defiance of Norma Ray, it should become quite apparent that they might lean just a touch to the left of center.
Now, sugar, don't you dare go overlooking the shimmering icons that adorn the altar of their youth. We must speak of the blue-eyed, steel-jawed nobility of Christopher Reeve, standing tall in his primary colors, and the feathered-haired devotion inspired by Sean Cassidy. And oh, the glittering, toothy wonder of those variety shows. Donnie and Marie, swirling in sequins and stage lights, casting a spell that placed S.M. Beaumont squarely and unapologetically in the very midst of the fabulous rainbow-lit left.
Oh, Sean and Donnie, they were just dreamy, weren't they? You know you were conjured up in their very image. Oh, do try to be nice, damn it. Oh, heaven help us. Somebody go fetch the broom. Honey, I warned you those pearls were going to break free, and now they're rolling across the floorboards like tiny white marbles. But don't you fret yourself, dear, neither about the jewelry nor the politics. A liberal Southerner, at least one who is truly deeply Southern, does not wish to rip down our traditions, provided those traditions don't involve the messy business of marrying double first cousins or stitching the good bed linens into robes for midnight parades. In fact, the ideas a liberal Southerner holds might just surprise you. It's your favorite tale to tell, dear, so do go on.
One particular holiday season, the patience of S.M. Beaumont finally frayed like the hem of a moth-eaten velvet curtain. They had grown weary, bone-deep, and truly exhausted by the endless clashing crusades against the simple, inclusive grace of happy holidays. It was then that they encountered an unsuspecting Wiccan, a creature draped in slimming black garments that whispered of midnight, dripping with silver charms and moon-dusted doodads that chimed with every breath. This person was complaining, with a voice like a jagged stone, about having Jesus and the whole of Christmas shoved down their throat. S.M. Beaumont, possessed by a sudden sharp clarity, looked that person square in the eye, the way a hawk looks at the movement in the tall grass, and spoke. "My dear," they said, "can't you find it in yourself to be satisfied with the ancient hallowed influence of the evergreen boughs and the burning of the Yule logs? Is the celebrating of the birth of one God not just as significant, just as heavy with mystery as celebrating the birth of another?" It was a moment where the old ways and the new thoughts collided, a testament to the fact that even in our modern squabbles, the smoke of the old fire still drifts through our hair. It showed that beneath the refined Delta manners, there lies a spirit that demands a bit of common reverence for all our sacred stories, no matter whose name is on the altar.
Now, I'm not entirely sure if that was a moment of true enlightenment or simply the exact point where a Southerner's politeness and goodwill reached their breaking point, but it serves to show that we are not here to bicker over the machinery of politics. S.M. Beaumont generally finds it uncouth to discuss such things in mixed company. While they keep themselves informed and harbor their own quiet opinions on tariffs, taxes, and foreign policy, they understand that a neighbor's mind might work differently. They know exactly what is said about the common availability of people's opinions. The only stance they will publicly and valiantly defend is that a nation by the people and for the people should damn well include all people, and it better treat every last one of them with dignity and respect.
But do not mistake that grace for silence. That does not mean our stories won't ever be used to show the deep lasting impact of both the good and the wretched kind of tree stumping that happens on the campaign trail. Now, you must understand that S.M. Beaumont did not first reach for this digital sorcery out of a desire for the easy path. No, sugar, they turned to the AI to fend off the creeping shadows of multiple sclerosis, a cognitive skirmish meant to keep the mind sharp and the wit limber. They say learning is the only true tonic for a brain marked by such struggles, and so they began to weave their thoughts through the machines to keep the lights from dimming. But then, as it became clear we were destined to live through the return of our crimson-hatted scourge, their writing took a turn toward the roots, toward history itself. We watched as orders were handed down to rewrite our very past, a bucket of ideological whitewash meant to scrub away our ancestral memories. Each stroke of that metaphorical sharpie felt like a blow against the truth. But, well, we aren't discussing politics, are we? I shall bite my tongue until it bleeds. I must confess, S.M. Beaumont truly adores the venomous ire of the socially aware Yankee. There's a certain performance in it they find quite delicious. However, it became painfully apparent that those folks aren't truly acquainted with history either, despite their loud proclamations. They say the victorious write the books, and I remember with vivid clarity the comment that finally set S.M. Beaumont on this war path. Some Yankee soul brimming with misplaced righteousness declared, "These people will learn what happens when you're treasonous, just like those Confederate rebs were taught." Lord have mercy, and they have the audacity to say Southerners are the ones still fighting that old war. And that, mind you, came from a fellow liberal. After a long, hushed litany of words we dare not repeat in polite company, S.M. Beaumont responded with every ounce of poisoned politeness a low country soul can muster. Yes, darling, it began with that most lethal of Southern benedictions. Bless your heart. They pointed out, with a precision that would make a surgeon weep, that the very liberties and rights those Yankees so loudly defend were Southern ideals, many of them crafted by Southern hands. And, while the reasoning may have been tragically misapplied, the act of secession itself was not viewed as treasonous by those men, because our own Declaration of Independence states it is the sacred responsibility of a people to sever ties with a government that no longer serves them. And right there, suspended in the light like dust motes, is the absurd truth behind this entire podcast. To be Southern is not merely to occupy a coordinate on a map or to have been birthed on a particular patch of red clay. It is a state of mind. It is a culture possessing a history and a law so deep it transcends race, religion, ethnic roots, or the meager jingle of coins in one's pocket. It is an identity that refuses to be simplified.
Now, after all that truth, wouldn't you like a blatant lie?
Just a little bit of fiction to sweeten the pot before we depart. Oh, do tell about your young stepmother's quest, be Indiana Jones, and discover the Beaumont's long-lost Confederate silver.
Don't call her that. If you must use some gentlemanly honorific, call her that former Miss Mississippi. But that is a good little tale to be telling. The morning after another night of those tropical storms blew through the low country, I stepped onto the second-floor veranda with the soft rustle of my dressing gown trailing behind me like a whispered confidence. In my hand, I cradled a steaming mug of chicory coffee, lightened and sweetened just so, though I found myself staring into the depths of the porcelain with a twinge of regret. I really should have had the fortitude to spike it with a generous measure of Irish cream. The morning seemed to demand a certain medicinal fortification that sugar alone simply cannot provide. I began my slow promenade down the length of the veranda. My eyes narrowed as I inspected the blue shutters and the tall French doors for any insults hurled by the previous night's storm. All seemed to have held their ground against the wind's temper. However, as I neared my bedroom doors, my gaze dropped to the floorboards. There, stark and damp, was a trail of muddy footprints, a woman's size by the look of them. There was no telltale tread of a sneaker or one of those clunky hacking boots so favored by the younger, more athletic contingent of the Junior League. The League, bless their hearts, is a marvelous institution for the more industrious housewives, and they do such tireless charity work. I was quite relieved when they saw fit to blackball my own application years ago. I simply don't have the constitution for that much organized sincerity. These prints were smooth, turning with a predatory grace toward my bedroom doors before continuing their march toward the far stairs. I turned my gaze outward. A low, ghostly mist hovered over the ground, clinging to the earth as if afraid of the coming sun. Small limbs and a confetti of leaves were scattered across the lawn, but thank the Lord no significant labor would be required to restore order. Reaching the far rail, I leaned out to peer down into the old-growth rose garden. My favorites, the reds, pinks, and yellows, looked battered and subdued, their velvet petals strewn across the mud like discarded silk ribbons. But it wasn't the storm damage that drew my eye. It was the ground itself. The earth was pockmarked, riddled with fresh, shallow holes, as if a frantic terrier had been let loose in the night. "Damn it," I muttered, the words stretching out into a long, melodic sigh that only a low-country tongue can truly master. That explained the muddy prints. I sighed to myself, leaning heavily on the damp wood. I really must find a way to convince Daddy's young widow, Tiffany, the former Miss Mississippi, mind you, to cease her attendance at those ridiculous history lectures. They are nothing but moonlighting magnolia fantasies served up for Midwest church ladies on bus tours, women seeking the ghost of Scarlett O'Hara and hoping to find another coat of wax and varnish to buff over the tragic, jagged truth of our glorious cause. Tiffany had swept in here just the other afternoon, vibrating with excitement over tales of jewelry and family silver buried in the dark of night during the War of Northern Aggression. That is the charmingly defiant term favored by the Ladies' Historical Society, an organization whose membership is dwindling so rapidly that I believe the chair of the membership committee has been comfortably buried since the second Clinton administration. Brandishing a brand-new shovel like a scepter, Tiffany had informed me she just knew the Beaumont silver was out there in the dirt, waiting for her touch. I've watched her for weeks now, teetering through the garden in her knock-off heels, exerting a truly impressive amount of effort to dig these pointless little craters that my yard service has to refill every Tuesday. It occurred to me then, as I watched the mist begin to break, that I really ought to be a Christian and confess that the family silver, which was never particularly grand to begin with, is sitting perfectly safe and quite tarnished in the china cabinet. But then again, a more delightful thought occurred to me. Perhaps I'll just take a little trip down to the Dollar General, purchase a cheap set of flatware, and bury it near the mums. There is a certain wicked joy in imagining the look on that girl's face when she finally recovers the Beaumont legacy.
Oh, I would have given my right arm to see the look on her face had you truly stooped to such a delicious level of deception. But alas, imaginary or not, we do have certain standards of decorum and expectations to live up to in this house. We are, after all, creatures of habit and greeting, even when the world outside is crumbling like a stale biscuit. Now, good manners, that ancient, invisible glue that holds our crumbling society together, dictate that we must thank our dear, darling guests for indulging us. We are profoundly grateful to you for sitting a spell and listening to us ramble, at times quite nonsensically, through the thickets of this Absurd Truths and Blatant Lies podcast. It is a rare thing to find a soul willing to navigate the labyrinth of a mind as crowded as this one, and for that we offer you a deep, courtly bow. We must urge you, with all the refined insistence of a Delta hostess who won't let you leave without a Tupperware of leftover ham, to come back and join our circle again. Yes, we are going to say it. It is an unwritten rule for these parts, a sacred liturgy whispered in the rustle of the cornfields and shouted from the spaces between the grand white columns of the manor porch. It is the heartbeat of our hospitality, and it remains unchanged by time or tragedy. Y'all come back, you hear?